Hey, good morning. It's Monday and it's time for Manhood Mondays with Coach Ellis. I am Coach Ellis, your coach. So look, we've had a very eventful weekend here in Virginia, a very eventful weekend. And so I want to talk to us a little bit about manhood in regards to how we talk to our children about current events. Hey, look, we all know what happened in Charlottesville this weekend. We all know about the hate and the pain that's going on in Charlottesville. So as a father and as a husband, as a man in the community, how do I help our young people? How do I help my family? How do I help people, my friends, grasp what's really happening in Charlottesville? So on Manhood Monday today, I want to talk just a little bit about how we address this with our family, our friends, and our foes. So let's start with family. As a man, I have an obligation to prepare my children for the future. I have an obligation to make sure they understand the world's landscape. Everything is not doom and gloom. But when things like Charlottesville happen, we have to take time to sit down with our children and have a conversation. I have an 18-year-old, I have a 19-year-old young man. I have an 18-year-old young man, a 19-year-old young man, and I have two daughters, in their 20s. And I have to sit down and explain to them that Charlottesville is real. Charlottesville happened, and it happens all the time. And that Charlottesville is part of America, but it is not all of America. There are people who feel like the alt-right. And they're everywhere. They're in your schools, they're in your churches. You work with them. You don't know who they are, but they're there. But then there are others who feel the opposite of the alt-right. And guess what? They're there as well. So we cannot lump everybody, every Republican, every conservative, every white person into this space that we have the alt-right. But it requires us to look at who's in our circle. So I encourage my kids to look at who's in your circle. Have these transformational conversations with your friends who look differently from you. Yeah, they won't always understand. Talking white privilege with folks who don't understand white privilege can be very frustrating, but it's necessary. The fact you have to have the conversation means that they've been granted some type of privilege. So you look at Charlottesville, and you talk with your children, you talk with your spouse or your loved one or your sweetie, because as a man, it's my job to protect the ones that I love. You don't protect them by ignorance. You protect them by knowledge, and make sure that we are sitting in the right place with God on this, sitting in the right place with each other on this, to ensure that if this happened in my neighborhood, if this happened in my city, what would we do? Would we watch it on TV, or would we be down at the square? Would we be willing to be attacked for what we believe in? We had that conversation with family, because ultimately, if we decide to engage and something happens to us, like what happened to that 32-year-old young lady who died, it impacts her family. So my family will need to know that if there's an injustice like that, I'll be out front. If there's an injustice like that, or maybe I won't be out front. They need to understand that this is part of who I am, whatever position I take. And I have to understand them. It wasn't so long ago in the civil rights movement, it was young people that generated and gave them the movement energy, not their parents. And in a lot of cases, the parents simply did not understand why their kids took the risk. It's important that we find out now that if our kids will take the risk, and if so, why, and encourage their engagement in their community. We have to have this conversation with our friends. As men, we must gather with other men and say, you know what? Not here, not now, not in my city, not in my community, not in my neighborhood, not in my backyard. This will not stand. Be you black, white, green, yellow, purple. This will not stand. And then as men, what do we do as men? Because as men lead, the world follows. There's a reason that God has established men as guardians and protectors. And it's not because she can't. It's not because she's not able to. It's not because she's not smart enough. Okay? It's not for any of those reasons. It's simply because God said so. So as men, we have a responsibility to our community, to our family, to our friends. So let's have those conversations. We also have to have these conversations with our foes. Last night on my radio show, one of the things that I talked about is that what happens in Charlottesville is not simply a matter of racism. It's not simply a matter of prejudice. It's not simply a matter of protesting and counter-protest. It is a matter of the heart. And how do we change men's hearts? By having conversations, having transformational conversations. So if I find someone who has an alt-right perspective, I have an obligation as a man to look them in the eyeball and say, bro, I disagree with you. Now, let's reason together. We may not agree now, but let's reason together. We may never agree. We don't have to have common agreement, but we will have common understanding. I'll understand why you are, and if you feel the way you feel, and you will understand why I feel the way I feel and how I respond to you feeling that way. This is essential because as men on this Manhood Monday, we cannot simply sit by and watch life happen. We must be in the business of making things happen. So we're just bystanders and spectators. Well, men, we're wrong. We must lead. These are the times that men must step up and lead. Women must lead too, but these are the times that men must step up and lead to make sure that this doesn't happen in my community. It doesn't happen in my backyard. And when it does happen, and Virginia is my community, so when it does happen here, make sure that I'm not silent, that my voice is heard. Because even if they don't hear me, let them never say they have not been told. For part of manhood is sticking up for what's right, even when nobody's listening. Being a lone voice in the wilderness. At some juncture, we simply say enough is enough. Hey, I'm Coach Ellis. You listen to Manhood Mondays. If you want to reach me, catch me at coach@elliscrum.net or Coach Ellis on Facebook. And we'll have another transformational conversation on Manhood Mondays next week. And we'll see you then. Have a one-tabulous and great Manhood Monday. We'll see you later.